Welcome to the podcast about Lighting Matters. Our unflinching conversations uncover the nuances and complexities which shape the craft of lighting design.
We explore the pivotal whys behind a lighting designer's choices and find honest answers to your most challenging lighting questions because lighting matters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Lighting Matters podcast. I'm Avraham Moore with More Lights.
And I'm Lisa Reed with Reed Burkett Lighting Design in St. Louis. And I'm so excited to bring my friend as a guest onto this podcast, Brittany Lynch. You want to introduce yourself, Brittany?
Yes. Hi. My name's Brittany Lynch. I am a senior associate designer at Clanton Associates.
Yeah, this costs a little something to put together, and we're very lucky to have a sponsor today in Barco Lighting. Great company, back of the day doing all that fluorescent cove stuff without the socket shadows, and now turning into a really reputable linear LED manufacturer. Great products.
Well, I have some good memories. They were a really wonderful sponsor of one of our emerging professionals days at the IES conference, and they sponsored and they brought the EPs out and gave them a factory tour and all kinds of swag. And I just remember that so fondly. It was really a great day. And then, of course, the products. I have a couple of recent projects. I was just telling you guys about the modified custom product that they made for us that was shallow and wide to fit perfectly into a structural element at an outdoor Metrolink station. And they even chamfered the corners to accommodate the structural welds so it would just fit perfectly, so snugly. It's so beautiful still to this day. So we've been really happy with them.
Yeah, I've found that they are very helpful when you need that slight modification. We actually, just looking through the products, reminding myself, we have a bunch of their stuff on a project that is going out to bid soon. So excited to have them as a sponsor today. Brittany, have you used their product at all or had any experience?
Yeah, I think when LEDs were hitting the market, Barco was the first to provide the linear product that we trusted in terms of, color matching and thinning and all of those early issues we were seeing throughout lighting manufacturers having problems with that. And Barco just really seemed to step into that role. And it was very quickly a super trusted linear manufacturer that provides custom solutions that you need and really fantastic product support. So great things to say about Barco.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate them being sponsors today. And so, Brittany, we always like to start with a little bit of, so how'd you get here?
Right. I know. Sorry. I wasn't sure if I should get into that right away or what. Yeah.
No, let's start at the beginning.
Oh, okay. My story of how did I get into lighting design? So, every child who wants to do architecture, they see Frank Lloyd Wright. So for me it was that instance of seeing falling water on the art history slideshow in 6th grade. I was like, this is what I need to do. And I've always been very spatially oriented. I have memories of being a kindergartner and rearranging the furniture in my room, which now after having 2 kids I realize that's weird.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
You're right. My kids never rearranged their room either, but I did it all the time.
Yes. So immediately the way that space works and as a kid, I wasn't sketching my dog. I was sketching, leprechaun houses. And so all of these things sort of built on each other. And I found myself in architecture school. I think the sneaky thing, how everything worked out was the lighting part. And I think that was definitely a trajectory I was probably always destined for. In high school, I played volleyball, and I would base my favorite gyms on the lighting. So
That's awesome.
that was a thing. And then also I was playing with lights all over my room when I was a kid. So it was eventually going to be a path I was going to stumble into. And the reason why I really got into lighting is kind of fun because, I graduated in 2009 with an architecture degree, bachelor's of architecture from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. I think the irony is I was like, no, I'm not going to go to the Lighting Research Center and get a 1 year master's because you can do that there. I was like, I'm done with school. And that was the recession. And there was no place that would hire anybody. It was hard. And so I found myself working for this small nonprofit that did energy audits for the utility. And in that role, I was able to, use my math brain and do energy calculations, my architecture brain to understand the building systems. But what really was fun was the lighting part. So I found myself after a few years there teaching myself lighting because I thought it was so interesting. And I was in Montana, and we were looking at what credentials could you get to be a lighting person? What does that even mean? And it was like, oh, you can be lighting certified. And I looked at the register, and like back in 2012, I think there was only one other person who was lighting certified in Montana. And so that also meant that the nearest place they gave the one exam a year was over in Seattle. So I see these things and I like have this plan, and that was when we had like the door stop for the handbook, the lighting handbook.
Oh,
And so
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Still have one.
essentially, yeah, essentially I read that book. I was like, this is what I need to do. Um,
Can't
and
imagine reading that thing.
I did.
Oh my gosh.
It's like if I want to learn, like this is what I need to do, and it was really helpful. But the most interesting part of all of it is they only give you one exam in person per year, and I really wanted to get this done. And the exam was given beginning of November, and I was due with my first child on December 1st. So the only way for me to get my lighting certification was for me to hop on a plane 36 weeks pregnant, go take an exam, and come back.
Wow.
I mean, it's not
Wow.
as bad as you think because it was one flight. But like that's what you got to do.
Two flights there and back.
Well, yeah, it was very swollen. Wouldn't recommend it.
But that speaks to, oh my gosh, Brittany, how you and I have gotten to know each other
Yeah,
is through, being moms in this demanding profession of lighting design. And there you were, before you were
yeah,
really in the profession, you were dealing with that, carrying both things, carrying the baby
yeah.
and the work.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you just like, "This is what you do, this is what you have to do." I just accepted it, and it was funny, like, in the delivery room, I'm telling because I had to negotiate with my OBGYN, "Let me go on this trip," and, like, the baby's coming, and I was like, "Hey, guess what?" He's like, "You're having a baby?" I'm like, "No, I passed my LC." Oh, God.
You're nerdier than I thought.
Oh, yeah, for
Wow.
sure. I think I've like leveled out with children, that part of me, but I think that's a fun story. And like from there, yeah, lighting was my thing, and I moved on to work for a lighting manufacturer. And then I really moved into the lighting design industry. And it's great. I love it. It's meant to be, and it's so fulfilling. So that's my story.
Well, because you and I have talked so much about the the practice and doing the work and being a woman in this industry and being a mother in this industry, I told Avi I'd like Brittany to come on and talk about her work. You're kind of known. You've really carved out a place for yourself in our industry as an advocate for mothers. But I also know that you're an awesome lighting designer and that you do incredible work. So I wanted you to come on and talk about your work this time for a change.
So I moved to Clanton Associates back in 2019 with the very purposeful thought that I wanted to make a difference in our industry on a level that I wasn't on a level that is really broad. And I saw a talk from Nancy about the model lighting ordinance, I think in 2017. And I thought, dang, this is a really good way to make a positive impact for lighting in communities. Like of course I love, okay, I think we got this out of the way. I'm an artist. I love the spatial, how to like all of that, love it. But I was like, how can I actually make a difference? And when I was at Lamb Partners, working with Glenn Heinmiller, we got a lot of fun on the energy part of things, which, okay, yes, it is fun. Like how do we, and it was right at the cusp of ASHRAE adjusting the LPDs and really like tightening up our energy saving, like really grabbing that low hanging fruit. But I saw that as like that chapter's closing, and we kind of see we can do that with LEDs. What's the next thing where I can do it, have impact? And it really is this dark sky piece and lighting ordinances. And so I made the move to Clanton Associates because I wanted to participate and as best I could be in that conversation and be in that work. So that's really where I'm landing now, and I have some interesting stories or perspectives to share too on that front. But that's where my passion is right now, for sure.
So share.
Yes. Okay. So another thing to keep in mind is I'm from Montana, so I grew up looking at the Milky Way. Not a big deal. My husband, when he came out, when he was, we were dating, he was just staring at the sky, and I'm like, "You're crazy. What are you doing? Like, that's normal."
That's what my parents live on a farm 40 miles south of Kansas City, and whenever I go there, on a clear night, you can see the Milky Way. Not well, but you can see it, and I'm
Mhm.
always out there. She's having to drag me inside because I'm staring at the sky. I was like, "Mom, I have like
Yeah.
10 stars in my sky. This is..."
Yeah, and I was born and raised and continue to live in Chicago.
Mhm.
What are stars? They're
Yeah.
airplanes moving to O'Hare every 8 minutes.
Right? Yeah. So, wow. And like that, I took advantage of that, obviously, growing up. Then we moved to the Boston area and it was gone. I remember being in Troy, New York in an astronomy class on the top of the building in the observatory, and everybody's like, "Oh," and I was like, guys, this is no." Like I could see all this high pressure sodium around. This is insane. So, um, really I see the way to make an impact is by creating lighting ordinances and working with communities who want to do, like, we'll call them dark sky principles, or follow the best way and the most appropriate ways to light their community. And we have this fun community in Colorado because it's very much a resort community, but then it's very rural, and you can see the night sky. But we do fight when we have metropolitan areas and there's lots of light pollution. And so it's a really great place to come practice that, because like that desire and environmental interest really exists. So, just being able to work with local governments and partnering with them to see what the right answer is. And then when you get into it, it becomes the criteria, we know what it is, but it becomes a translation service. So it really evolves into communication. And how do we know how to communicate with our architects pretty well, I think, as lighting designers, but how do we really leverage the communication to, the general public and cities and municipalities? And what does that look like? So, we explore that and have been exploring that in different ways. And I think it's really enlightening because I can't help it.
No, excellent use of puns.
Uh,
Lighting puns are so easy.
oh
Yeah,
God,
love
yes. But because people actually do care about seeing the night sky. Like that is one thing we all really align with, and everybody has the different viewpoints. But in the end, there's so many shared interests that we can bring people together with that, and that part is real cool. Not like personally a project that I didn't work on, but I know in like Fort Collins, for example, they had some issues getting their municipal code adopted because of the growth plan. But we were able to go into that realm into that sort of hot spot and pass the lighting ordinance. So, we were able to still get these changes through just because there's like enough shared interest between the communities to want to adopt something and do better. So, yeah, it's great.
I was on a panel recently here in St. Louis talking about sustainability. And I really talked most about dark skies. And anyway, at the conclusion of the panel, really to make the changes that need to be made, it is a matter of getting the general public on board. And so I think you're right that this is an area that people get and understand and want dark skies. So um, so one of the things I shared in that group, and I think it's worth saying out loud here, even though we know, if you wouldn't mind, like the 5 principles for responsible outdoor lighting. Is that what it is?
Mhm.
5
Yeah.
lighting principles for responsible
Yeah.
outdoor lighting.
I want to back up for a second because I wanted to say through everything we've done, it feels like there's a few common things that happen, and what you will see in most every ordinance or most every community is they will think that you can't do dark sky lighting and achieve appropriate light levels. This is something that
Really?
every time. Yeah. So I really, I mean, maybe we can go there in a minute, but like the 5 principles of lighting, like that's a great segue because it tells us that, hey, we actually can do all. It's useful, targeted, low level, controlled,
And then it's
the
warm.
color temperature. Yeah. Yeah. So like useful light, targeted light, the low level light, the appropriate amount of light, all of those things, those principles are set up to do dark sky and you don't have to sacrifice light levels. So it's our job or like, at Clanton Associates, our job to convey that message very, very clearly in every community that we work with. Because that's the last thing we want is for communities to think you can't do both because you can. And it's beautiful when you do. It's coming back to that shared interest and like what are these common misconceptions of we can't do dark sky. Another common misconception that we get is our resort community is the only kind out there. We have very specific problems and nobody else has them. And, and I don't know if I don't think I've heard that on the design side, really. I think about how does this correlate to experience in the design world? I think, you know, maybe for a given site or something, sites have very specific needs. Um, but it is funny because you will hear that repeated for each community. And we listen, of course, but their story is the same version that we see time and time again. you know, it's it's interesting just to pull that all together.
Yeah. So then are you able to use that experience and expertise and say, well, this is what we did for this community because they needed that? Or do they not want to hear it because they want to be a unique unicorn?
Yeah, that's a delicate walk to do, to take.
But
you know, uh, because they are unique. No place is the same. Um, but the principle of the matter is usually the same. How it's walked out and how they experience it. Like for example, color temperature is a big problem. We can't agree on color temperature. That's a common one that we see. And the way that we remedy that is by doing a demonstration and we do a survey. And so there's these tools that we use to demonstrate that, but it's just coming back to the principle of the issue and from there educating and encouraging feedback and listening seems to help a lot. Um, it's so much more of a partnership versus design projects that I find with ordinances. It's I don't it's more emotional. People people don't like more regulation. That's another one. but they ask for it, but they don't want it.
What's the most surprising thing you've seen in a survey? The most surprising answer.
Oh gosh,
Do you always get the results you expect from the survey?
never. Never.
Mm.
It's been a long time since I've done like a walking survey, but I think the opinions that like just being allowed to express how you are feeling about a certain lighting, like we'll take them out and look at a facade and say, "Here, what do you think?" So I don't think it's like the surprise part to me isn't in that it's not in the response. I think the exciting part is the flip of them realizing and be like, "Oh," like, that's the educational part of it, I think, for me, is seeing them like, I get it, like, this is not," and as lighting designers, we all know this, but I think we take that for granted, and I think going back to discussing a light level scenario, high versus low, and what can your eyes perceive, and kind of like putting that in language. Like that's the fun part because it's like everybody sees, everybody pays attention to brightness.
This has got me thinking about, the different stakeholders that are involved in projects, all kinds of projects, but outdoor projects. You've got the police who you just can't have too much light. They just want more and more and more light. And then you've got I don't know, if it's on a street with retail businesses, they want light that's going to bring people to their stores. You've got the general public who maybe thinks they want more light, but I don't know. Like, how do you and maybe it's what you just said, you show it to them, but cities kind of have their standards already, and so are you able to help them understand that it can change? I'm thinking about a project we have right now where the police want whatever it is, 4 or 5 foot candles, and how do you talk to them about
Right.
if
When I
it's
think
already
about
their standard? I mean, like, I guess they're
yeah.
asking you to change their standard, but
Well, I think about like what Rick Udding says, and that's like more, and this is dark sky too, is more light means you need more light. And so we go from there to demonstrate that. And we've done demonstrations at a police station where we had the lights at a certain level, and then they go around to other sites, and then they come back to the parking lot. Unbeknownst to them, we take it down to 50, 25% of that light level. And we're like, "Okay, what do you think?" And they take the survey, and they're the exact same responses. So it's like tactics like that we have to use because there's just so much prejudice or like preconceived ideas baked into their experiences. Um, I mean, just think about your visual experience. When your brain like has to categorize things, otherwise you'd be overwhelmed, right? It's like you drive to work and you're like, get there and you're like, how did I get here? like, and I think the same goes with the visual experience of nighttime. Like after a while, your brain just comprehends something, and so then when you really like uh, get a second to check yourself on that. Like those are the instances and the opportunities where we can show this is actually what needs to happen. I think the battle is getting that in a ordinance proposal, getting the fee for that. It is imperative to have stakeholder input and to do these types of communications one on one if there's issues. And a lot of the times the ordinance budget doesn't allow for that. So that's got to do better there.
mhm.
But that seems to be the best way for us to get ordinances passed is by working directly with people in the community part of it.
I mean, just even as in that example you gave, the human visual system isn't static, so it's changing and adapting to the amount of light that your eye is exposed to. So that's hard to say to people, but you show them. That's really brilliant.
And it's how do you respect the work they put into it, right? So a city or municipality will bleed over something and finally get it through. And there's nothing about light trespass, but yet there's complaints about light trespass. And so a lot of the times we're handed these documents that they only want to um, revise, we'll say, but really they need a whole new whole new ordinance because they're based on wattage. So it's the delicate conversation of trying to provide them what they want. We want to help, but how do we how do you manage that line of, okay, let me respect you, respect the work you've done, but you need to change it all. So, yeah.
Those codes based on wattage, that cracks me up. I've seen pool codes based on wattage too.
Yes. Yeah. I think that the interesting one is when we're working with the city of Aspen and Pitkin County is no linear lighting is allowed outside.
Oh, I've heard that one.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we fixed it. It's allowed now. Okay. Announcement to all of those who do high end residential or others. Yeah.
Well, I guess in uh, I've experienced two situations that I've yet to been able to resolve, and one I can bring closer to home, which is my next door neighbor has the spotlights, and every time the dog comes out, right, my whole master bedroom's lit, and
Hmm.
I've kind of put to my team a couple of times like, what could we put up there that would not do that to my house but still light her backyard? Because I will climb up a ladder and replace it. But it's just in that like kind of little residential, right? I've found this issue, and then if I take it one step further, my village and the lovely city of Chicago, as well, has started to put in all these LED streetlights, and I think we're talking about different elements, but I think it still applies to street lighting. And they're just buying the cheapest thing they can that has this idea of dark sky. And I think it is. I mean, if you look at zero, or I guess, and we haven't really defined that in this conversation, but as I
Mm.
understand it,
Hmm.
anything above 90% or zero, or 90 degrees or zero, right? You want no light going up into the sky.
Right. Right.
But
Yes.
what about like 80% of the light output going at uh, 85 degrees right into your windshield? And I just happened to notice
Yeah.
this when I was driving in the city of Chicago recently. There's no blue band at the top of my windshield anymore. So, if you ever run into Avi Moore driving down the city of Chicago in at night, I'm typically wearing sunglasses because it's so glary.
Hmm.
Those heads they put in. So they got LED. They are dark sky as far as I could tell. I mean, it was
Right.
some Chicago-based company that set up a manufacturing facility for a few weeks to make Rahm Emanuel happy. Um,
Yeah.
but it still doesn't have that quality, and I think that's the other part of what you've been working on is great dark sky, but what about quality and, as we were just talking about here, light level and intensity and color, right? All of these things apply to creating the right environment at night.
Yes. So, for example, we write street lighting guidelines. This is what you should do for this area. And for a while, we wrote them based on activity because the ISRP 8 said these are all based on activity. And we have since pivoted from that and we go by adjacent land use. Because what was happening is we were getting called in to do forensics on projects because a new a new residential suburban neighborhood was put up. And the engineers that went in to design it go, no, like in 10 years, it's going to be medium pedestrian density. So we're going to put the lights in for that right now. But they were lighting up cornfields or, like really rural areas. And like there was so much backlash to that we were like, you know what? We need to do adjacent land use. And like that's something we should talk about more as an industry because we don't want to it's a litigious society we live in. We do not want to put ourselves up for that professional risk. It's really terrible when you have that happen and you have to go be deposed and talk about that and get sued and all that fun stuff. Um, but how do we do the right thing? And so instead of our engineers trying to figure out what the right thing is for them, you use what we do is we do light levels per lighting zone, lighting requirements per lighting zone. This is something that we see obviously in ASHRAE, IACC with the LPDs. Our lighting power densities are different per zone. We all understand this. So why can't we apply that to our ordinances? So that's something, and like that's what the model lighting ordinance does, and what dark sky is trying to do as well. And so it's just taking it just a tiny step further is going to it's going to protect the designer, and then it's going to do better for the community.
I think you're hitting on two really important points. One, don't forget that IES are recommendations, and they leave it to the expert. And the second most important point, the lighting designer, who's not necessarily an engineer, but a designer who's making intelligent choices based on light level and all of those things combined, right? Like there is no residential area that's the same. It's just like you were talking about with the different the words defeating me, but the different areas, right? Everything's a little bit different, but but it may not be, but it is, but
The principle is the same, right?
right.
Yeah.
Principle's the same, but maybe you needed and you have a similar art intention, a similar feel wanted, but the technology to meet that art is going to be a little bit different because you're in Aspen versus being in the middle of Texas somewhere. I think you'd use a different looking fixture between those
I've
two places.
done
Just
both.
my thinking. Right. Well, see, there you go.
Yes, yeah, totally, totally. I just think about I was on the energy front before I came into the design of it. So I know exactly where they're coming from. I see those energy conservation calculations, and they don't want to build another power plant. The utility themselves, they give themselves that funding so that they can save the energy and put the money into saving the energy so they don't have to, you know, make a new power plant. So that's a big part of it. And coming from that background, if I could go back in time, I really wish that the optics conversation was brought into that realm of the energy saving. And I know ILD really did lobby and try, and we're working on that. But, we started with the 5,000 Ks, right? Everything, all the street lights went to 5,000 Ks, and we're like understanding this is blue light. We can see better with blue light, and the LRC did some really great research on that, But we're just peeling it off. But as we're peeling it off to get the better savings, so we don't use as much energy, which is a good thing. We forgot about the human visual system and quality lighting, and now we're stuck with Abby wearing sunglasses as he drives at night. So, yeah.
And they say they're 3,500K, but they're not. And what also was interesting, I wrote an op-ed in AIA Chicago Magazine because they hired a company to replace all the lights in Chicago. That was the end of the conversation. There wasn't any
It didn't.
design.
No design.
There wasn't, and I remember asking some of the other lighting designers in town, like, did you do any layouts? Did you help anybody? Like, before I put this op-ed out there, I want to make sure. No, it was all about energy savings, 3,500K, and controls, right? They want to be able to make sure the lights were on, even though I don't think they use it. But, I can't speak to that specifically. But
Right, because you can't tell. But yeah, I mean, it comes back. The most efficient source is the glary, unshielded source, right? And so that we can't have efficiency at the sacrifice of everything else.
right, especially in the early 2010s when all of this was happening. And I think about going to, like, the NIA conferences and who was there to talk about, the quality, and so I would love it, and, I mean, I don't think that ship has sailed, but, how the ILD tries to partner with these associations to get into that, or, as lighting design firms, like, if we do pro bono work or something, maybe I'm saying this is what I should start focusing on is how to get into that because we can all partner together. It's not far off. Yeah. I'm sorry that they didn't have a designer in Chicago. And yeah, and then people get mad, and then what happens is they end up having to replace them all, and they have to go through the process because, I mean, think, for example, when headlights changed to LED. Everybody knows. Or like what's the other one that they started using? Like,
Yeah,
right, right, and then all of a sudden, everybody's flashing their brights at you, and you're like, "Dude, like, chill out."
right.
We're very sensitive at night to
Or
that.
all those municipalities who have failed LEDs
Mhm.
that are now just that beautiful UV blue on your
Purple
street.
ones. Yes.
Right.
Purple lights. Yeah. I mean, super cool. Love the color.
Mhm. Mhm.
Don't think that's what they intended, though.
No. Or and another one is emergency vehicles. They wanted brighter lights, and now it's dangerous. They're so piercing.
Yeah, to the point where you can't see because they're so bright behind you
Right.
at night. I mean, we have this amazing thing called like lighting controls and dimming where they wouldn't even have to think about it, right? It would just understand the general illuminance of the area and they would still turn on the lights in the fire truck, but it would just adjust accordingly based on the general illuminance of the space. I mean, not that hard, but it costs something.
Oh, us lighting designers are such interesting creatures. It's wonderful. I We just had ILD, and I was sitting around during crosstalk, and I was listening to these other lighting designers, say how they, need to take a screenshot from this website so they could put on their precedent image here, but they actually need they do this to the spec sheet, and I was like, really, I really felt validated. It's just the things that, like, I feel like our community has such a beautiful knowledge and such a passion to actually take the time you know what I mean? To stitch all these things together just to represent it right. You know? I
Yes.
mean, I think there is something beautiful that is within our lighting design community that we really can leverage it further. I think, and I know there are organizations, obviously ILD, IES, I think Business of Light, leveraging that. So, what can we do more? And like that's because I really think, and make now it may be different because there's more tailored educations for lighting design, but a lot of people find themselves making that very conscious decision. And the result is this industry that people actually want to be here and they like it and they care. And it's so cool. And so yeah, I think for me, like leveraging that together in certain ways could be so powerful for municipalities to better affect the dark skies and really get the message out there. You can do dark sky is the appropriate amount of light. You can do dark sky and have the right lighting. Like that's hand in hand. And so that is something that I see this in our industry and it like makes me excited. So
That would be amazing. We need to get there.
mhm,
We
mhm.
need Avi to see stars.
Yeah, and I guess I would say that it comes with more and more advocacy for the profession is my belief. It's kind of my path that I'm trying to head down because I just think that there are not enough lighting designers in the world, but beyond that, we're not known as well as I'd like. And Lisa and I recently posted a podcast, or we will be posting an episode where we challenge everybody that if you see something on Facebook, LinkedIn, a website, an email from a manufacturer, which I actually just got one the other day, and then immediately question who was the lighting designer and how did that happen?
Yeah, because so often, you have these gorgeous pictures of these installations that an architect will share or like Abby said, a manufacturer with no acknowledgement of who did the lighting design.
And then I would go back to that, the city of Chicago. They probably just didn't know that for some small amount of money, right? I mean, I would be the first one here to say the entire city of Chicago lighting, just include my name. Happy to help out, right? Like, oh my gosh. Because it's my city. I mean, it's not mine. I don't live there anymore. But, we want to make the places we live better. I want to see the stars, right? And we as lighting designers, I always like to make sure we speak to this point when we're talking about passion, is the only reason we pay our mortgages. The only way we pay our mortgages is by the passion for our art form and nothing else. We are not connected to the products at all whatsoever. There may be some, but I think I could speak for these three that this passion is singular focused on this art form that we are obsessed with.
Hmm. Yes.
And we just have to share it more. I think there isn't my latest theory, and I feel like we're veering off, but my latest theory is that there isn't another thing in the building, in the built environment, or people that are so passionate about a singular element, right? When you think about budgets for buildings, budget for outdoor environments, whatever it is, lighting's one line item, right? Concrete, finishes.
Right.
Sometimes it's just absorbed in electrical. It's not even in line item.
It might even be just in that one line item inside of electrical, right? But there is, I welcome anybody listening to say that I'm wrong, but I've yet to find a a a profession in the built environment that is singularly passionate about a single line item like lighting designers are. And I feel like that has turned the eye to some people and they don't understand. They don't understand this passion.
It's cultish.
It is. No, I see where you're going with this, and it is like being fresh off of ILD. It's fascinating to me how I think about like the practice of architecture and getting the drawings out and like there's a way that you do architecture, right? And like but for lighting design, the profession itself, there's not a book, there's not a how to. There's some programs out there that get into it a little bit and that you can explore that, but not everybody in the profession has that background education, right? So we don't all have the same credentials. Yet we land at this lighting crosstalk and say the same things that we want in our products, what we demand from our architects. It's very fascinating how though we're everywhere, we're so aligned in like, the principles of lighting. Like we all get that and we all strive for that. I think it's so cool. And it is like that passion is in there. It's fascinating. Yes.
So how do we harness that? Avi says advocacy for the profession. That's one thing, but just to make the world understand, to make the general public understand that lighting can make their lives better.
It's we really are so connected to lighting. There's so many shared interests after doing so many interviews and ordinance works and talk and which is allowing me to talk to people about how they experience light. everybody pays attention. So I would say this is an opportunity that is sitting right there in front of us that we can crack and that we can, look at something a different way. Like, I would love it if Netflix could do a special on lighting. Like,
I love it.
any
Why
any
not?
Netflix executives out there, like, let's do this. Like, let's demonstrate the power and how we are, and like, everybody's talking about your circadian rhythm, like, oh, I can't go to bed, I have to take melatonin. Like, all of these little breadcrumbs are out there, just like everybody does have a stake and everybody is interested, and the fun part is bringing people together, making them realize that, and then you get the unanimous yes on your ordinance vote passed, so like that's like, for me, like that's where that I feel like the most achievement in those moments. But it's there. It's ripe. We got to pick it.
And I think hopefully you could extend that into, yeah, we want flicker out of our kindergarten classrooms. And yeah, we want flicker out of our, you name it. And we want, there's just so many extensions. I think that what's amazing is what you've started is that ordinance level on the exterior side of it, right? And so how do we extend that even further? You know, again, like you said, nobody wants more regulations, but in the end, it is better. And it just gets people to, think a little bit more before they throw a big bomb on the side of the building or whatever, right?
Exactly.
And then extend that into a quality of the built environment, right? And bring that back and
Yes.
extend it and keep going.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about healthy buildings, human-centric lighting, and it's all there. There's so much to explore. That's why that one line item is so interesting. It's biological, honestly.
Well, my other thing is the other thing I've kind of come to is there isn't much else you can count in a building when you think about it. Toilets, sinks, faucets, but those are kind of all based on ordinances and code. You have to have this many toilets and this many sinks and yada yada
Right,
yada, right?
right.
Parking spaces
Parking
also
spaces,
also codified.
windows. Well, if it's a glass building, it's glass, right? But are we counting vents? Are we counting linear feet of duct? Are we counting how many sheets of drywall at bid? We're just looking at a drywall guy's or drywall person's price, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But man, you can count how many, hopefully not 6-inch, 4-inch downlights there are in the job, and compare that to the current price at Home Depot of $22.95 or whatever it is,
Yeah,
or that pull top fixture that I can buy at Granger versus the dark sky one that I may need one more pole in 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yard street, but man, it's going to be so much better.
I mean, that's interesting about the poles, because recently I was working on a project where they're like, "Well, the poles are the most expensive, so we're gonna take out 10," and there were like 20, and I thought, "Wow, isn't that interesting that you think that I did a design with 50%, 150% of poles that we actually need?" Like, no, no, no. We don't wanna put in that many poles. They're a pain in the butt. They are really hard to coordinate. They're very expensive, and so that's just another, demonstration of how our practice is misviewed.
Exactly. Well, yeah. Yeah, because you're getting paid a percentage of the shipping and freight and the number of poles, right?
Mm, mm.
I wish sometimes.
Yeah.
But no,
For the record, no.
right. We did a calculation. This is what it is. We figured out the least amount.
The least. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so that's also another issue.
Oh, there's so many places that this could go.
I feel like this is a downer, and I don't think we should end on this sort of sad, frustrated lighting designer note. So, what's awesome about what you're doing, Brittany?
It's going to have real impact in a positive way to create ordinances that have light trespass values, have lumen limit values. It's going to help so we can see the night sky. And I will tell you that we do, we use the satellite imagery, and so you can see on there. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it, and it shows the curve of certain neighborhoods, and pretty much all light pollution is going upwards. So anything that going in there, I know it's going to trend it back down, and so that is the payoff. That's the excitement. That's the impact that I'm here for.
Well, I think we should all try to keep that. I know in our practice we try as much as possible to put light down, right? As opposed to
Hmm.
uplighting buildings or anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, you know, every once in a while there's something that you end
Yeah,
up doing.
just put on
Um,
a timer.
yeah, yeah, and watch out for one of our architect clients is a bird watcher and talks a lot about the bird migration and all those things and talks about so how can everyone apply this a little bit more because it, we want to see the stars. That's where the dreams come from, right? There's so much more there, and it gets lost without great thinking and the great work you're doing.
I think what I would ask lighting designers to do is when you find yourself designing an outdoor space, that you think very carefully about the adjacent land use. So, who's your neighbor? Where's your property line? If you're doing a lead calculation, you already know that. But I would ask us to think more about what lighting zone is this versus what it should be, and design it for what it should be, because that's enough.
I love that.
That's really good.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for being here and for the comments and everything. And this has really been great. And this takes a little bit to get our word out there about how important lighting is and that lighting matters. And today's episode, we appreciate our sponsor, Barco Lighting. Barco's a family-owned and operated, made in the USA enterprise. Um, They are a proud innovator and partner of the lighting design community. Since their start in 1982, they've adopted the industry's changes and continue to thrive, right? We talked about this before. They were big on CFL. And as Brittany said, and I actually remember they had that aluminum tube that had the little LEDs that you could slide
The
into
closet
their,
light.
what was it?
Is it the closet light?
I think it was it was a T5 shape
Mm.
aluminum piece that had LEDs that you could snap into the tombstones. It was their
Mm.
first, it was the
Hmm.
LED Wild Wild West. I was just reminiscing about that at IALD. Um, Barco Lighting offers a wide range of linear LED luminaires, from versatile and minimal profiles of the Bodhi series to the rich wood materials of the False Real series. They manufacture something for any project.
And they know that amazing employees play a vital role in a successful customer experience. I love that. And they are proud to be an IBEW union company. They do their best to source materials locally, which is also awesome, to support local communities and to help reduce their carbon footprint. They pride themselves on being an eco friendly practice through recycling, solvent free manufacturing, and being leaders in greener coating processes. All their fixtures are manufactured in and shipped from their factory in Huntington Beach, California, and are Buy America Act compliant. Their mission is to inspire creativity and unique ideas when it comes to implementing lighting solutions. So, how can Bartco Lighting bring your visions to light? Learn more at bartcolighting.com. Thanks for being here, Brittany. It's
Thank you for
always so
having
fun
me.
to talk to you.
Appreciate it. It's been fun.
Lighting matters. As we wrap up, we want to reiterate how much we value your time, and we hope you found it as much fun to listen to as we had creating it. Remember to like it and share this content with your friends and colleagues.
The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors. Our content has general application, but we recommend obtaining personalized guidance from a professional IALD lighting designer, such as RBLD or More Lights, for your next endeavor.